Welcome to the Respectful Divorce Podcast. If you're considering divorce, it's important to know that you have options for how you divorce. On the Respectful Divorce Podcast, we explore those options and provide advice from divorce professionals. I'm your host, Tim Crouch. Today, we're talking with members of the Connecticut Council for Non-adversarial Divorce. Joining us are Mark Soboslai, a collaborative divorce attorney, divorce financial professional, Sophie Denis-Helenek, and collaborative divorce mental health professional, Charlotte Ejderberg. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Hi, Tim.
So let's begin with a fairly easy question, although I've had some people say that's the hardest question of all. Why or how did you end up in family law? And Mark, as the attorney in the group, how did you end up as a family law attorney?
So it's kind of a long story, but I'm going to shorten it. I initially was going to go to law school after I got out of college, ended up with some family issues. And instead of going straight into law school, I went to the Superior Court in Connecticut, where I had a position in the Family Relations Office of the Connecticut Superior Court. And that is essentially the family court where all divorce-related matters were handled. And during the time I was working in the Superior Court as a family relations counselor, I then went to law school. And following that, when I came out and I had a clerkship with a very smart and wonderful judge on the Connecticut Appellate Court, I basically had then defined myself as a family law person. So I really was, that was my niche after that. So I've been in that ever since.
Yeah. Sophie, I saw your website. You're the Divorce Sherpa. How did you, as a financial professional, end up in the divorce world?
Well, I divorced myself. So when I divorced, I really didn't know what I didn't know. And it's when I really decided to specialize myself. And I do have a background in finance. I used to work in Wall Street. So I know how to make decisions. I used to be a trader. So I know how to make important decision quickly. I do know finance in general. But when I divorced, I was just very lost. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And that really was kind of this just this model that resonates. And I'm like, I need to start focusing and helping people who's going through divorce. And it's when I start being more knowledgeable, and it's when I start getting certified, CDFS and CDC and so forth. And it's where I start really understanding the non-adversarial divorce. And I just find the perfect niche for me, which is financial neutral.
Yeah. And then, Charlotte, as a mental health professional, you probably had people coming through your office, but how did you sort of move into this divorce process world?
Yeah, very much like Sophie, I am also divorced. And it was during that time that I realized the importance of having someone, in addition to a great team of legal help, someone that would advocate for the children, be a voice for them, especially when you're dealing with high conflict, but even in the best of circumstances, to have someone there that focuses on a child-centered approach to the whole process. And that's really when my interest sparked for that area and getting more involved in collaborative and mediations. And shifting my focus a little bit more from seeing clients day to day to working with teams.
And how have you seen the collaborative process work from the standpoint of the work that you do?
I think it's wonderful because I see myself a little bit as the bumpers. Mark and Sophie has heard me talk about this before in bowling, when you put up the bumpers in bowling to help keep conversations on track, making sure that we don't get into more higher conflict areas, and keeping the conversation focused, in my case, on the children, but even as the process as a whole, to keep it more, keeping conflict out of the conversation, navigate these emotional ups and downs that are inevitable, stay respectful to each other, So I think the mental health professional has a big role in that part. I think as a team, we all work towards the same goals, keeping the process moving forward, but really to provide support and guidance and give perspective on the situation.
So, Mark, divorce for attorneys is commonly seen as being litigation, fighting it out in court. How did you end up in the collaborative and mediation world?
So, as I mentioned before, I was working for the court system. And while I was there, back in the 80s, I was introduced to mediation from the court perspective, right? So we started doing child custody and parenting mediations while I was still working in the court. And after I got out of law school, I put together a course that I taught for and still have been teaching for the past 30 plus years for lawyers to learn about alternative means of resolving disputes, focusing on mediation. So that has been really a focus of my practice for as long as I've been involved in the family relations world.
And how did you find when you moved into those areas, your practice changed?
Well, the real shift for me only happened when I said I don't really feel comfortable doing both litigation and collaborative practice. I've heard a very prominent trainer talk about being unable to ride two horses at the same time. And the idea for me is that if I could stay focused on the things that are important from my own values perspective, which is really to stay with the non-adversarial collaborative type practice, I can just do that work better. I'm not as distracted by being involved in the litigation world. And frankly, I've been in the litigation world for quite a number of years in my career. But since I've made that choice, it's a much cleaner way of doing the work because I'm not distracted by the whole litigation business that goes on with people.
Yeah. And then Sophie, getting into collaborative, how did you end up in collaborative?
Well, it just, I think it's just a natural thing to be for a financial person. So I think I have the tendency to be an advocate, and that I love to do that. But then I realize as well, like when you're neutral, you have the opportunity to really try to bridge and make a difference, and how like the financial piece can be resolved, and how you can really try to support your team and your clients. And I love numbers and they just talk to me. So what I'm really good at is the people talk and they just express interest and opinion, and I just translate it as numbers. And by having me as a neutral, it really allowed me to bridge that gap. And it's basically, I just find my space, and it's how I end up enjoying to be a neutral.
I have heard it said on several occasions that the secret sauce of collaborative divorce is the financial professional. Because as the neutral professional, you sort of help people to see what their future is going to look like, which probably is the biggest source of anxiety in a divorce. Is that kind of your experience?
So I think the problem with finance is the financial fears. And the financial fears are really, yes, linked to what am I get now and where I'm going to go. There's this concept of finish under the bridge, which is very predominant in people when they just express financial fear. But the truth of the matter is everybody's working with the same part. And now we just have to work how we can divide it. And it is true that a divorce usually leads to a certain downsize of living style. And really what I'm trying to help them is it's okay to take a step back and cocoon a little. I'm always trying to just bring the brighter side, because at the end of the day, when people divorce, there is a transition. So it really is how I help them to transition. It is definitely a critical point. Because of what it represents. It's kind of like you're an athlete and you finish your career and what's next for you. So I always try to accept the fact that it's a very sensitive topic, and I guess I bring them the news and try to have like empathy and be compassionate while educating them. And that's a key piece. I feel that a lot of time people are scared because they just don't know. And when they know, they may not like it, but they just know. And knowing is half of the game.
Wow. Mark, as the attorney, how is it different to have these neutrals, the financial professional and the mental health professional, as part of the team? How does that change the process?
So if you think about the typical case, what you'll end up with is two lawyers sort of one-on-one negotiating with each other. And by definition, you're aligned with one client, right? That's your typical model. In this model, when you have someone like Sophie who will be gathering financial information and helping us to put together reports related to the assets and the income, and you have someone like Charlotte who will be helping us to sort of keep an eye on where the communication is going, and either between the clients or between the professionals. The secret sauce for me in terms of the team is to be able to let go of that old habitual pattern of lawyer against lawyer and negotiating with that sort of win as much as you can mentality, and be able to allow the team to work together. And that's really where the magic happens, because then I can look at the perspective of someone else who sees my own client differently than I see this client. And I could learn a lot about my own client and how they are if I ask Charlotte from a mental health perspective, or if I ask Sophie from her financial perspective. I learn so much more about my own client than I would if I didn't have those two folks on the team with me.
And so, Charlotte, your role as the mental health professional, you're the communication coach, but you kind of keep the process on track and maybe spot those areas where things are getting off track. Would that be right?
That's absolutely right. And I'm available to our clients. So when they feel uncertain about areas and they don't know where to turn, they can always communicate with me, and I can help them get back on track, either just the two of us or three of us or the whole team. But then another big piece that I find is really important in my work is when children are involved, creating a balanced, child-centered parenting plan. And helping parents stay focused on what the long-term goals are and understand that it's a process. When children are young, this parenting plan is going to have to change. And this is another area where you have so much uncertainty going into the process. So being able to talk them through, help them understand that the decisions that are made at this time is not what's made long-term. To see that it can be a fluid document, if you will, and that they can come back and revise and make changes as the needs of the children change.
Yeah. And I guess maybe the other piece that goes with it, you're not doing counseling during this work. This is kind of a different hat that you wear, right?
Yes, correct. So I'm acting as a coach. I'm not counseling anyone. And for me, that is also something to always keep in mind. It's easy to fall into that if I don't watch it. Having been a counselor for a long time and done therapy with clients, but it's a coaching role.
So I have to ask you, because, my wife's a collaborative attorney and I hear tales when this happens with her. Do you ever have to sort of remind the lawyers that they've got to back down a little bit on their advocacy role?
It has happened. I think I have been very, very fortunate to work with amazing attorneys that know their roles, and they're really, really good at it. And that is what makes it such a pleasure to work with a good team and to work with this process. You see the progress that you make. It's a thoughtful process when it's done right.
Mark, it really is a different mindset for you as attorneys, right?
Yeah, and it's so critically important to stay focused on that mindset, because if you do litigation long enough, as I have, you become sort of habitually oriented toward the battle mode. You're always looking to sort of persuade and argue and convince and all those things, and you got to kind of pull back a lot. And what I think people are familiar with and refer to as the paradigm shift, and it's sort of the idea that you can literally change the way you practice law, but you really have to focus on and pay attention to it, because things become sort of second nature for litigators, and some of the people I know are extraordinarily good at it. I thought I was pretty good at it myself, but I don't want to do that anymore. So I've got to change all those habits and really embrace a whole new way of thinking and practicing.
Sophie, I'm fascinated by the divorce Sherpa. Why the Sherpa? Why that term for what you do?
Well, after Wall Street, I kind of took a couple of years off, and I became a professional mountain climber. And I climbed Everest and a bunch of those, of the highest peak in the world. And what I really liked about this concept of Sherpa. So as a professional mountain climber, you actually don't have Sherpa, but my first climb was Mount Everest. And at that time, I really didn't know what I didn't know. So I really found that I needed the guidance and the support of a Sherpa. And they know the way. So that's not the first time they climbed Everest. So it's so much easier for them, because they already know the process, and then they anticipate your need. And they're just like here for you. And just having this presence really give you strength, comfort. So actually I climbed Lhotse. So I climbed Everest, of course, and then I climbed Lhotse, which is literally the same way up to 26,000 feet. And then you go to the left and you climb Everest. And then you go to the right and you climb Lhotse. Lhotse is the fourth highest peak in the world. And so I kind of live that. The fact like I kind of climbed 2 times, kind of almost to the top of Everest. And the fact I actually lived it, I didn't need oxygen. I just like the whole experience was so different. So as a climber, first of all, they call me Little Sherpa. So it was a cliche. And I do love what the Sherpa represent in this most noble term. And even my logo is a Sherpa logo, which is an endless knot, which is, of course, a sacred Buddhist symbol. And that is why I really wanted to be kind of the Sherpa and the guide for my client and helping them through the process.
Yeah, Charlotte, she talks about making a difference. How have you seen the collaborative process make a difference in clients' lives?
I think one big piece that is always a takeaway for me is watching clients be able to communicate. It comes back to the communication again. Even when we're dealing with high conflict cases, the chances of our clients continuing to communicate, especially when it comes to the children, is so much greater going through this process, because they are making the decisions together. It's not someone deciding for them, but they're setting the goals that they're working towards together. So even if it's not perfect, I think the longevity of our work is something that stays with our clients.
Mark, how have you seen it make a difference in clients' lives? Well, I would echo what Charlotte said, of course. The idea of having perhaps at least the chance of preserving family relationships intact, albeit within the restructured family, is certainly very, very important. The other thing is that the experience of a trial to a court in Connecticut, we don't have juries, but we do have judges who will decide your fate. That could be very, very difficult and grueling experience for the clients. And people talk about the trauma of that and the impact, the negative, destructive impact on not only the individuals, but also their families. And so this particular process is designed to literally bypass that whole entire traumatic experience And the way that we do it is by signing a collaborative participation agreement, which we all commit to, all of the professionals and all the clients in the very beginning, that if we don't resolve this, the attorneys are disqualified. We cannot go to court afterwards. So that participation agreement is essential to keeping everybody focused on resolution. And again, it's not the same type of argumentative sort of battle that you would find when you have to go into a courtroom and persuade some total stranger that your client is right and the other side is wrong, or that your client deserves what your client should get and the other one doesn't deserve what they should get. That whole entire model is just not part of what we're doing in the collaborative space that we work in.
And when you go to court, a judge makes the decision, but in the collaborative process, the clients make the decision, right?
Yeah, a fundamental principle is that the clients have self-determination. And so we don't decide for them. Our objective, all of us in the process, is to help them make decisions, make informed decisions. And when we get around to looking at, for example, the financial piece, we do all of the same things, basically, to get all of the information available to allow the clients to make a fully informed decision. So it's not like people are left in the dark. In fact, it's part of our ethical rules that we have to be fully transparent with regard to any financial information that might be necessary. The term is materially relevant to making a decision. And so we all operate in good faith to make sure that we have all the decision and we help people to make the right decisions if we can.
So we're doing this podcast, the Respectful Divorce podcast, ahead of Divorce with Respect Week, which is coming up March 3rd through 9th. What does respect mean in the divorce process? And Sophie, I'll let you go first on that.
I feel that would be hearing each other, try to be transparent. So there's a very strong emphasis on transparency in the collaborative divorce. There is a lot of meetings, individual or with a team, that people can really express themselves in a respectful way, in a sense of there is Charlotte helping to kind of control the dynamic, but as well that when we go through the process, it's not a war. We're not here to build up a little army and fight against each other. We are trying to find a compromise. And just this mindset inspire respect.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mark, all of that being said, this is not easy. This is being respectful is still hard work, right?
Absolutely. And it all starts with how you enter into the process. If you can actually respect the people that you're working with, you can respect, as a lawyer, if I can respect the expressions of not only my client, but also the expressions of the other client who may not be feeling all that favorable toward my client. This is a divorce after all. So part of this is about being respectful for what people are expressing during the process. And I'll guarantee you that most people who sit down across the table from a lawyer are going to be very defensive about whatever it is that lawyer is thinking or doing or saying. And part of my job is to sort of let everybody know that if something is of concern to you, my job is to listen and to respect what it is that you have to say. And if I don't do that, I'm not doing this work as we are all trained to do. And so I keep that as a very high ideal for myself.
And Charlotte, just to come back to you on that, there's a part of this that is also about your own self-respect as the client. How do you feel about yourself and how you performed in the divorce process, right?
Yeah, I think for me, respecting the process is respecting me and my own values. And I went into this line of work coming from a place where it was something that I wish I had known at the time was available to me. So I try to be very conscientious of what am I putting out, what I know my clients need without putting words in their mouth, but I want to be that person that they are coming to for that support. And like Mark said, to be respectful and truly listen to what they are looking for, and also help them formulate it and put words to it. Because sometimes, and I think that's all of our jobs, to really hear our clients, what is it that they need from us, or what is it that they're looking for? They may not be able to put the right words on it, and it may come out in a way that it's much more demanding than it is, which causes tension. So I think my role is to try to diffuse that when needed. And then, of course, the transparency, try to encourage people to be as transparent as possible, to feel comfortable, to be authentic in the process.
Well, and in the end, to be able to move on with their lives in a more healthy way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the goal. A fresh start after this. Life does move on, and life is good. And I think being able to help our clients see that this is not the end. This is just wrapping up one chapter and starting the next, even though it sounds very cliche, but it truly is the way it goes.
So I do want to ask you all about your group, the Connecticut Council for Non-adversarial Divorce. What is that group, and what do you do, Mark?
So this is a statewide group that originally was mediators. And as collaborative practice became more and more popular in Connecticut, the group then embraced the collaborative professionals as well. So we are now the statewide organization of mediators and collaborative professionals. We also have multiple smaller practice groups throughout the state. For example, where Sophie and Charlotte and I are located, we're in the Fairfield County area of Connecticut. And we have several practice groups that we also participate in with each other and meet periodically and so forth. So the statewide group will meet. We've got a board of directors, and we have a number of members, and we also have our individual practice groups, which are a part under the umbrella of the statewide group.
And part of what you do as a group, whether statewide or in your practice group, is you sort of continue to train one another, talk about cases and different ways of handling things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A large service, part of our services that we provide is training not only for mediators, but also interdisciplinary collaborative professionals. And within our individual groups, we also do a fair amount of training and case discussion, where we could compare notes after a case is over, or sometimes if we have a difficult matter that's pending, we help each other, professionally, to work through some of the things that we might be facing. So
how can someone get in touch with each of you? Sophie, what's the best way to reach you?
That would be through my email, which is sophie@divorce-shepa.com.
Okay. And Charlotte?
Also my email, which is charlotte@charlotteejderberg.com.
All right. And then Mark, what's the best way to reach you?
So the best way to reach me is mark@markslaw.net. And then we also have our statewide Good Divorce CT.com and Good Divorce Connecticut. GoodDivorceCT.com is the way that people can reach our statewide group.
We'll put those links and links to everybody's website in the show notes. Thank you all for joining us today on the Respectful Divorce Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Tim. It's really fun.
This important programming note, Divorce with Respect Week is March 3rd through 9th. During Divorce with Respect Week, you can talk with lawyers, divorce coaches, and divorce financial experts for free. To learn more about the divorce process and your options, simply go to divorcewithrespectweek.com to find professionals near you. That's divorcewithrespectweek.com. I'm Tim Crouch, reminding you that collaborative divorce is a better way to untie the knot.